Okay, guys, I think that, like I said, we all know what Pythagoras says, the Theorem of Pythagoras, but remember that there's a certain condition, right? We can't just use Pythagoras in any triangle. It has to be a right angle triangle. Okay, so now what the converse of the Theorem of Pythagoras says is, remember we said if you have a right angle triangle, then the hypotenuse squared is equal to the sum of the other two sides squared. Now converse Pythagoras is going the other way around. So if the longest side squared, do we remember that the hypotenuse is always the longest side in a triangle, right? So if the longest side squared is equal to the sum of the other two sides squared, then it is a right angle triangle. Okay, so basically it's taken the condition of Pythag and the result of it, so what it means, how we can use it, and it's swapping the two around. Okay, so now when they're asking us to fully classify triangle ABC, in the question they're not going to tell you using converse Pythag, right? We just need to classify this triangle. Now guys, remember from grade 8, hopefully, that when you are classifying a triangle, you have to give a classification in terms of the sides. So you have to say, is it scalene, is it isosceles, or is it equilateral, right? That we can see by looking at the three lengths that they've given us. Can we see that it's three different lengths, right? So that is definitely a scalene triangle. But we also have to classify it according to its angle. So we have to say, is it acute angled? So are all three angles smaller than 90 degrees? Is it obtuse angled? So is there one angle that's bigger than 90? Or is it a right angle triangle? Now what they've done here is they haven't given us any information about the angles. Alright, and the questions that you got in grade 8, in the beginning of grade 9, they had to have given you some information about the angles in order for you to classify the triangle fully. Alright, now because they've only given us sides, we're going to have to use converse Pythag to figure out, is it acute angled, obtuse angled, or right angled? Okay, so what you're going to do, guys, the first step is you are going to identify the longest side, which is 18 centimeters. The reason for that is because if this is a right angle triangle, that one would be the hypotenuse, right? So the hypotenuse of a right angled triangle is the longest side. So therefore we are going to start with that side, the longest one, which is AC. You are always going to look for the longest side, and that is the one that you start with. And guys, what you're going to do is you are going to square that side and work out what that value is. Okay, so we're going to say AC squared is equal to, I'm not going to write that it's equal to AB squared plus BC squared because I don't know if it is. Okay, it might be, but I don't know that it is yet. So we are actually going to calculate that side squared. So we're going to say 18 squared. Right, which is what?
324.
324. Okay, on its own, guys, longest side squared on its own. Then separately, we're going to take the other two sides and we're going to square them and we're going to add them together. All right, I'm not going to put in equals here. I don't know whether it's equal yet. So now I'm going to write AB squared plus BC squared separately, guys. And I'm going to calculate those lengths. So 8 squared plus 15 squared. Right, what's that?
189.
189.
200, not 100.
Yes, of course, thank you. 289. I was tasting you guys while I'm passing my test. All right, 289. Guys, are those two equal? So can it be a right angle triangle? No, if it was a right angle triangle, then Pythagoras would work. right? Then the longest side squared would be equal to the sum of the other two sides squared. No, not when you're squaring them. Okay, so you're not going to put any units there. So now, guys, we need to identify, firstly, it's not a right angle triangle because Pythagoras doesn't work. But we can't just say it's not right angled. We have to say, okay, it's either obtuse angled or acute angled. So now we're going to look at these two lines that I wrote underneath the equals bit. Okay, you're going to look at what is the relationship actually between the longest side squared and the sum of the other two. Can we see that the longest side squared, 324, is bigger than the sum of the other two squared? Now, guys, when that happens, that means that it is going to be an obtuse angle triangle. Okay, so now you're going to say AC squared is not equal to, is greater than, right? We know what that symbol means. That's the greater than symbol. AB squared plus BC squared. Therefore, triangle ABC is an obtuse angled. And then what else did we say? Scalene triangle. Okay, you have to mention both of those classifications in your answer, please. Now, there is a bit of a debate about whether we should write converse Pythag here when it's not a right angle triangle, but for now, I think let's just write as our reason there, because this is the method for converse Pythagoras that we've used here to identify the type of triangle that it is. All right, so please, as your reason, let's write converse Pythagoras. You can't just write Pythagoras, guys. Pythagoras is when you know that it's a right angle triangle and you're using that to calculate the side. Okay, converse Pythagoras is what you use to actually classify a triangle. So let's highlight the word converse there. That is very important. Okay, if that word is not there, you are unfortunately not going to get that mark. Okay, very, very important, guys. You have to do it in 3 steps. So do the longest side squared on its own. Then the other two squared added together on their own. Then you make your conclusion. All right, then you write down, are they equal? If they are equal, you're going to say it's a right angle triangle. Is the longest side squared bigger than the other two added together? Then it's obtuse. Is it smaller than? Then it is acute. Right, the way that I always remember it, just as like a shortcut, bigger than is obtuse. An obtuse angle is greater than 90, right? So if the longest side squared is greater than the other two added together, then it's going to have an angle that is greater than 90. So it's going to be obtuse angled. And then for smaller than, acute is smaller than 90. All right, so that's just like a bit of a shortcut to remember it. That's basically what converse Pythag is all about, guys. Just using this exact calculation every single time. You have to write it out exactly like this. Okay, guys, if you do this, I almost don't want to show you, but I'm going to because I feel like some of you might make the mistake. If you do this, AC squared is equal to AB squared plus BC squared, and then sub in your values 18 squared, and then you say here is equal to 8 squared plus 15 squared, and then you get 324 is equal to 289, and then you're like, oh gosh, they're actually not equal, so let's say that is a 0. Okay, you can't state Pythagoras like this. What's this called? This like statement, the Pythag statement. You can't write that down unless you know that it is a right angle triangle. Okay, so please, you have to do separate calculation and then state, are they equal, greater than, or smaller than.